The 3 training pillars, the entry, the middle, and the exit. Let's talk about each of those. So when it comes to the entry, that is considered the first 3 poles. Okay, so why the entry? Why are they considered the first 3 poles? This is the place where the dog must physically adapt their body as they prepare to engage and then begin to weave. So this is required for a good entry. The dog needs to drive to the weave pole, they need to collect, and then they need to begin their footwork. In the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned safety as one of the items to consider in training the weave poles, and dogs that slam into poles are more likely to become injured. So dogs that fail to collect at the poles and then continue to drive down generally aren't weaving. Instead, they're bashing their way through, and that's how some injuries can occur. So what to know about the entries? Well, as I mentioned, the dogs will always enter on the left, right? Or they're going from right to left. And here's why this is important. There are 2 types of weave entries. There's the onside weave entry, which is where the dog is on the side of that entry. And here's what that looks like. Here's what a dog looks like when they are driving, collecting, and then beginning their footwork when they are on the onside entry. So here we have a really adorable dog and his boy. And as you can see, the dog drives down into the weaves, collects, and then begins its footwork. That's what you want to see on an onside weave entry. And as I mentioned, there are 2 types of weave entries. So let's look at the other side, which is considered the offside weave entry. This is where the dog is off the side of the entry and has to work its way around. And of course, I have a video for you. Here's an offside weave entry where the dog drives, collects, and then begins its footwork. So these 2 entries are very important, and here's why. The dog needs to know how to enter from both the left, which is the onside, and on the right, which is the offside. And they need to know how to do it from all angles. So here are the angles on the onside, and then here are the angles for the offside. Now, here's a little tip for you. Advanced handlers should be training 0 to 100-degree weave entries, while for beginners who are learning how to teach the dog just the art of weaving and focusing on that, they should focus on what Stacy said it best when she said, she shared this tip with me for beginners, is that they should focus first on those straight and up to 45-degree angles, right? So if you are newer, rather than trying to focus on entries from 180 degrees, focus mainly on the weaving, teaching your dog to weave, and your entries of 45 degrees and lower. All right? Now, here's the thing. When you adapt the entry goal for your level of experience, you're still on target to have your dog weaving in 12 weeks, right? So as a beginner, train the advanced entries later after your dog can fully weave. So focus on 45 degrees or less, while advanced handlers, you may be more experienced and you're likely more comfortable to train the advanced entries while you train the weave poles. Again, the goal for both is that you stay on track to train dogs to weave in 12 weeks. My goal, and so is Stacy's, is to keep you on task and to get you that success of a dog who can weave. All right, so let's talk about that middle, right? Now, I say that middle section is a bit of a variable. And the middle section is often what most handlers think of when they hear weave poles. It's the actual back and forth motion of the dog. Here you ideally want speed, efficiency, and consistency as the dog maneuvers their body through the poles. So why is this variable? Well, the way that a dog actually moves through the weave poles is going to change depending on, say, a dog size. A small dog is going to move differently than a large dog. A physical build of a dog, whether they have an actual outreach with their front structure, itself, depending on how square they are or perhaps how long they are, the rear and front length of reach, of course, their natural tendencies, and so much more. So that middle section is a bit more of a variable. Now, what I want to show you is a bit of some of the footwork that actually some dogs show in the WEAVE poles, and there is different footwork style. So the most efficient is considered to be the single stride. And I want you to go ahead and watch this video. A single stride is where one foot touches the ground and then the dog pushes off. So they're pushing off from the left to the right, to the left to the right. And this dog, especially being a larger dog, very efficiently moves through that. But there are different styles. For example, the footwork of a two-paw push is what I call it. So this dog style is that it actually takes both feet back and forth and then pushes off on that. Now, interestingly enough, there can also be a mix of footwork. So for example, I had a dog who used to do a single stride on one side and a double stride on another. And if you watch midway through, this dog will actually switch its footwork up. It starts single, there's a point where it does a double, and then it goes back to a single. Sometimes it happens that way. So one of the questions I'm often asked, can the contact method used influence the footwork? And the answer is maybe, right? There are so many variables. Sometimes it can help, sometimes it won't make a difference. All right, so now let's talk about, lastly, what you'll need to train your dog to look ahead is the exit. And you want that dog to look ahead past the 12th pole so that they can complete the weaves independently. This will give you a strategic advantage when you're planning your handling. A dog that can work independently allows you to focus on getting to the places that you need to be and then picking them all up after the fact. All right, so by the way, all of the questions I received for this webinar regarding the 10th pole pop-out was by far the most asked. And that means this is likely one of the most overlooked skills of the WEAVE pole training pillars. In other words, having your dog focus fully down all 12 poles and even beyond is something a lot of people don't take the time to actually address. And so I have a theory that handlers are so happy their dog is weaving that they automatically assume the dog will continue down until it runs out of poles. And unfortunately, that's likely not a good assumption. All right, so here's what it looks like when a dog is focused down past that 12th pole. And then this is what it looks like when the dog is not looking down, right? They are literally looking left, looking right. So of course they're not going to finish down to all poles. All right, let me tell you a quick story about Mary and Splash. So this is one of our students, and Mary says, I love my Splash, but his popping out of the number 10 pole has cost me so many qualifying runs. I had tried so many solutions, have many friends and trainers. I took Lisa's WEAVE class. The results were amazing. His confidence and speed picked up. He was happy doing all 12 poles, and I was happy. So here's the thing. Splash could weave, but the lesson on weaving through to the end was missing for him. And as it went on, as time went on, the 10th pole pop-out became the normal behavior. But with new foundation training geared toward the exit and a few tweaks in Mary's confidence, Splash was able to be successful. So if you are experiencing issues, they are solvable. But this also leads me to my expert tip to you. Focus on foundation exercises that strengthen your dog's weave skills in all three areas: the entry, the middle, and the exit.